Thank you. Thank you very much. I will be using a microphone because I can. Maybe it's a bit too loud. You're all sound engineers, so you have good ears. You're deaf. I hope not. Can you take it a notch down? Thank you. Yes, much better. My name is Bo. I have no idea what Nacho just said because my Spanish is very, very little. I can say no hablo español, and I can say dos cervezas, por favor, and that would get me, ooh, spooky. That would get me around. I hope you are okay with English. My only alternative is Danish. How many here speaks Danish? You speak Danish? Hjertelig velkommen. Vi holder en seminar på dansk, so no, we'll do it in English. If you have any questions and you don't want to speak English to me, that's fine. Nacho, he can translate your questions in Spanish to me. So I think we're good to start. Nacho said my name is Bo, B-O, very, very short, and it's not an aberration. It is a Danish name, that short. I'm short, so it fits with my name. So everything is good here. I have been working with DPA for 17 years now, and I'm a sound engineer myself. I don't wear black today. I normally wear black. That's our dress code, right? Most of us, we wear black. But I'm a sound engineer, and I work at DPA as an interpreter between sales and marketing and product management and product development, because I speak your lingo. I speak the language of sound engineers. And some of the, in product management and in product development, we need to know what does it mean when the sound engineers, they prefer a microphone with this shape or this sound or this sensitivity or with the distortion, something like that. So I can record, obviously, and do a lot of testing when we make new products, new microphones. So that's my main job. That's to have fun, do a lot of recording and a lot of reporting back to management about what I hear, what I prefer, and what I don't recommend, and then they will take the appropriate decisions upon my feedback, mine and others at DPA, of course. Today we will have, at the opening here, we will have a little history about DPA. What is DPA? Why? Where are we coming from? Why do we do what we do with our microphones? We will have a little theory session. What is the difference between dynamic microphones and condenser microphones, pros and cons? And a little theory with omni microphones versus directional microphones. What makes them directional, and what are the benefits of directional microphones, and what are the not so good, what are the opposite, what are the cons when we are working with the directional microphones, and so on. And then we have a band, as you can see. We have drums, we have electric guitar, we have electric bass. There's not a single microphone on the bass today, so he's just here to back up the band. And we have a saxophone player. He does have a microphone. That's very good. It proves the point. I have brought a lot of different microphones. I have more microphones that we're using on stage. I have them up here in my suitcase. So feel free to come up here and look at how we place the microphones and look at my case. There's nothing secret there, not yet anyway. Or not anymore, I should say. I have been traveling with these babies here for a little more than a year. And on some of the workshops I've done, I have had to hide them because they were not released yet, but I wanted to do a lot of testing, so I took the opportunity to put them on drums on some of the sessions. I can call them by their names now. That's fantastic. The last year I have been talking about this microphone and that microphone and then not saying anything else. So that's really good. I have a lot of philosophies about microphone techniques and the difference between techniques and technology. is the technology, is what's going on inside the microphone, and the techniques is what's going on outside the microphone. I have a lot of philosophies on microphone techniques, how to place microphones, how to obtain different sounds on different instruments. That does not mean that what I say is the Holy Grail. It's not the truth. It's just suggestions. Sound is super, super objective. We have as many opinions about drum miking as we are people in the room. I'm just one of them. I'm just showing you guys how I do and explain why I do it this way. And I will almost bet 2 cervezas that, 2 cervezas, that I'm doing things different than you would. And I will explain why. Okay, that was the quick introduction. I have a little video here showing just a little show-off of what DPA is, what we are doing. That would give me a chance to get my breath. Here we go. No? That was the second slide. There we go. Sorry about the lacking. We are recording this, and I believe we are streaming it also to the world. And there are some cameras up there, so there's a lot of technique going on. This, you may notice that it says for internal use only down in the lower left-hand corner. That's because we are not allowed to show this video on YouTube or anywhere else, which is kind of contradictory to what I just said, that we are streaming this live. Because we did not get all the permission from all the famous actors that we are using in these videos. We just grabbed some footage. We have an official video that we are using. We are a Danish company, and for those of you who don't know where Denmark is, I will tell you that Denmark is the center of the globe. I know that a lot of special Americans, they think that United States is the center of the globe, but this is the proof. Denmark is the center. Everything is coming from Denmark. It's a tiny little country in Scandinavia. We have the longest coastlines per citizen. That's not because it's especially long. I think yours are longer, but we are so few people. We are only 5 million people speaking this weird language. So don't bother taking Danish in school. It won't get you anywhere. We have 2 locations on this main island. The airport is right there. Should you ever come by, please look me up. I'll take you for uno cervezas, 2 cervezas, one for me. And we have 2 locations. We have the factory and we have headquarters. And there's a background for that. Why do we have 2 locations when there's only 100 kilometers between us? But it's because it's all started out with a couple of guys from a measurement instrument manufacturer called Bo. They were doing measurement instruments and including measurement microphones. Very, very delicate microphones that could measure the smallest sound pressure levels, the smallest noise levels. They also had vibration instruments and humidity instruments and all kinds of instruments. But one of the engineers working with Bo, he was looking at these microphones and wondering, what if we put a cable on it and put it into some sort of a recording system and listen to the microphones? Otherwise, they were just using the microphones to pick up sound from industry machinery or different applications where they needed to pick up the sound pressure level. But he wanted to record it, so he put the microphones to a test. He took them home and he started. And you need almost this amount of equipment just to record one microphone. So it was not really practical, but he did it. He did record his children playing and his wife's singing choir. And he was very confident that they had a product, that this microphone, it actually had a very good sound. So he took it to Danish broadcasting. They had a big symphony orchestra, like most broadcasters around the world. And while they were doing some measurement on the orchestra, they were recording the signals as well. And listening back to the recorded signal afterwards, they realized that this microphone has something that other microphones doesn't. It has a clarity, it has an openness, it has a transient response that we haven't heard before. Low self-noise and really high SPL handling makes a very wide dynamic range, makes a very nice microphone. Not only the data, the self-noise and the SPL handling, the distortion, but also the sonic character of the capsule. So these engineers, they went to the owners of Brüel & Kjær and they said, well, if we can make something out of these, we can make another business case if we start selling these microphones into the entertainment business. Not only the measuring business, the industry, but also the entertainment business. So they changed the preamp. The preamp of, the microphone consists of two parts, a capsule, this capsule here, and a preamp. The preamp was fitted to work with the measurement industry. That means that it had a BNC connector. It needed 200 volts or 130 volts, depending on the preamp, to operate. The capsule is the same. So they had just to change the preamp. So they changed the preamp with XLR connector. They made a balanced output because that's what we want. It's powered by phantom power, not 200 volts anymore. And then they just, it's not simple, but they added the capsule to this preamp, and now they have, it's easy. Sound is easy. When it says like that, it's too loud. They changed the preamp, and now they are they were able to put it in orchestras, classical orchestras around the world, because it seemed that this was the industry where the fidelity, the high dynamic range, and the clarity had the most importance. We did not go into the rock and roll market for many, many years, because rock and roll microphones were a total different product. But in the classical scene, in jazz and classic, and in sound effects and stuff like that, they were very pleased with microphones with high dynamic range, of clarity and consistency. And consistency is one of the main things when you do stuff like this. You want the two microphones to be identical because you want to pick up the room and the orchestra and the choir. You don't want to pick up the sound of the microphone. The sound of the microphone should be transparent. It should be the same as the cable. We are just adding a microphone at the end of the cable. We are not adding a sonic character. You like it or you don't like it. Sometimes we like to add sonic character. We need, typically singers, they like to have a huge microphone. It goes with the ego. You want a big microphone because you are a big superstar. And then you want maybe the sound engineer to add some character to your voice. But if you don't need that, if you just want to listen to yourself as you are heard by others acoustically, then you add a microphone that is as transparent as possible. And that's what they want in these classical orchestras. They want transparency, and they want the microphone to be consistent. They want the microphone to sound the same night after night after night, because what changes is the conductor and the orchestra and the music. It's not the sonic character of the microphone. So you want microphones that you can rely on, that when you put them in the ceiling, they will sound the same. Which is why they also use these microphones for when they pick up sound from rocket launches. There's not a take two on that one. If you don't get it right the first time, you don't get it. And the reason why they put the same capsule, they put it on the Mars rover. There's not a second chance. There's no service agreement up there. It has to work and it has to keep on working. So that's the same capsule as the one that was introduced back in the 80s, in the early 80s. And we are very proud of that. Our customers, they asked for the same sonic character when they started this. When they went from Brüel to DPA microphones, and they took that change because the Brüel people they had, or the owners of Brüel, they had to cut down on the staff of Brüel in 1992 because there was a recession and they were not selling enough of the measurement equipment. So they had to cut down to the core business and let a lot of people go. And one of the guys that they kicked out was the same engineer that had the idea of the 4006 for the classical orchestras. So he started his own company. It was called Danish Professional Audio, and they were supplying microphones from Brüel. So that was a very long name. So they shortened it to DPA microphones. But it is the same company as they started in '92, and they were just two guys starting it back there. Today we are 225 people headcounts, including production, because we are producing our own microphones. We are not sourcing capsules from Chinese companies. We are making everything ourselves, and that's back to the 2 locations. Because our customers, they asked us, why don't you make something smaller? These microphones, they sound really good, but they look stupid on the singers when they mount them on the theaters. So can we have the same sonic characters, the same SPL handling and the same self-noise, and then miniaturize it down to what other manufacturers have? And they tried and they tried, and they looked around the world to see if they could find someone that could manufacture these capsules smaller. And they couldn't find anything outside Denmark, but they found a company up here, where they were making plastic part for the hearing aid industry. They were making connectors and switches and so on for tiny, tiny hearing aids. And they knew a little about transducers, about microphones, because there's also a microphone in the hearing aids. Not that they were making them for the hearing aid industry, but they knew about them. They knew how to make them. So one of the owners of that company up there, he took the task, and he had a lot of skills. He knew a lot about miniaturizing microphones. So they joined venture and made a fusion in 2004 or 5, around there. So it is now one big company where we are making all the miniature capsules, all the small, tiny parts up there. And back at headquarters, we have but we have administration, marketing, all the sales force are up there just north of Copenhagen. And also the R&D. All the engineers, the technical school, university, they are all placed in this area. So getting labor for the it's a good song. It's easier to get labor for that kind of jobs up there in that area, and it's a lot easier to get labor for the manufacturing in this part of the country. So everything is fantastic that way. That's back to the 2 locations. So We make these tiny, tiny capsules. We make the bigger capsules, as you see here, and we mix them on the experiments, on the musics we are recording. Today we have miniature capsules that are made under microscope, and we have 19 and 17 millimeter capsules as overheads and on kick drums and so on and so on. So we can mix all these different types of microphones because they have the same sonic character. So you can recognize that this is a DPA microphone because it has this transparent sound. So it goes really well together. Each of these microphones are handled more than 200 times. That more than 200 handlings in making a miniature microphone. They are measured between 15 and 20 times on the way through the manufacturing. Because the material, you can imagine that the material, they are golden, they are gold inside, but they have very, very little gold. So the material is a relatively small part of the production. The major part of producing microphones like this are the labor. So we don't want to spend time on a microphone that will never meet the criteria, the tolerances that we have on microphones. So every time they pass some manufacturing step, they are measured again. So we know exactly what sensitivity or frequency response or noise or whatever we are measuring, that they are within these tolerances. So that's why we are carefully picking them. When we can make miniature microphones for speech, we can also make them for music, as I said before. One of the most complex instruments to record is the grand piano. The drums are really complex as well because it consists of so many different instruments in one instrument. But the grand piano is also very, very delicate, or there are not so much left for imagination when you are recording a grand piano. There is a tradition of what does it sound like, and we would like to have a grand piano recording or amplification that is very close to what it sounds like when you're standing next to one. So when you can pick up a grand piano with two of these miniature microphones and it sounds like a grand piano, then we have passed the test. The voice, how many here are working in theater? And live? Most of you are live, and then a lot of you are in theater. So you guys working in theater, are you working both on the stage with headsets or microphones and in the orchestra pit? Okay. So the rest of you are in for a little learning now, because when we are working with the voice, we also need microphones with a very, very high precision. And I'm just showing a picture of a microphone. It should be a picture of a t-shirt. There you go. This girl, she has a microphone sewed in the t-shirt to pick up her voice, because the microphone could obviously not sit on the forehead on Lucy here. That would look weird. The microphone needs to be out of the picture when we are doing film. But the voice is a very, very complex instrument. Of course, the grand piano and the drums are really, really complex, but the voice and the brain goes very much hand in hand. When we hear the voice, we hear, well, the voice consists, of information between 100 hertz, 125, up to about 8 to 10 kilohertz. That's the band limit of the voice. But within that bandwidth, it is very, very complex. The vowels, I, U, O, all the soft sounds, they are in between 125 up to 2 kilohertz. The consonants are between 2 and 4 kilohertz. Nacho, can you do me a favor and ask the guys backstage to turn down the music? They're having a party down there, and I want to be a part of it. But anyway, the consonants are between 2 to 4 kilohertz. But the paradox is that the vowels have a lot of level. We can sing vowels very loud. Oh, that's an A or E or whatever it is, but I can add energy to that. But the consonant, I cannot add energy. The sound of the T, not the E, T, that's the E that I'm raising, not the T, T. I cannot yell the sound of a T or the K. I cannot add energy to it. Well, a little energy, but not as much as I can on the vowels. So when we raise our voice, we change the balance between the vowels and the consonants. We have more vowels, less consonant. The consonants, they stay down. So if we yell the word act, we would have a very loud A and a very soft C and a T. And that reduces speech intelligibility. So we are not increasing the ability to understand a sentence when we are raising our voice. On the contrary, we are reducing speech intelligibility when we are raising our voice. And I'm saying we are reducing speech intelligibility because the consonants, they lie in this area between 2 to 4 kilohertz. And 2 to 4 kilohertz is unfortunately what we are also losing when we are losing our hearing. Like most of us in here, we cannot hear anything above 2 kilohertz. No, we can hear a lot. But when these consonants, they are compromised, then we are losing the meaning of the speech. When we have a reference, we can understand, our brain can compute, it can bring out the missing consonants, the missing information. Our brain can fill in the blanks. You understand English, so you understand what I'm saying. If I was speaking Danish, you couldn't understand what I was saying because you don't have the reference. You don't have the understanding of the Danish language. I will now give a little, very, very simple demonstration of that, what that means. This is a robot speaking, and it's artificial, obviously, and we have removed the speech intelligibility on it.
Jazz and swing fans like fast music.
And how many here understood what this guy was saying? He was, I can play it again. He is speaking English, or English-ish.
Jazz and swing fans like fast music.
Now you heard it twice. Still nothing? Like it's music. Yes, the last word is music, that's correct. So if I play it again, everybody will hear the last word as music. Because you don't have the reference, you cannot understand what he's saying. But if I give you the reference, you will be able to hear his, or be able to understand what he's saying. Imagine that you're working in a theater and you are listening to the same performance for the 100th time, maybe including all the rehearsals and everything. You understand every single word on the stage. Or you are working in film. Anyone here works in film? You work in film. You are sitting and you're reading the manuscript as the boomer is booming, so you know if you miss a dialogue, you look in the manuscript, that's what he was saying. He said something music? Okay, now I know what he's saying. Everyone else, everyone outside the sound card will hear
jazz and swing fans like fast music.
But because you have read the manuscript,
jazz and swing fans like fast music.
He keeps talking, this guy.
Jazz and swing fans like fast music.
That's your reference. Now you have read it. You have read the subtitles, or you have read the manuscript, or you have read the program, or whatever. You have read the book. So now you know that the guy is saying
jazz and swing fans like fast music.
So now we have the same reference. So
jazz and swing fans like fast music.
Now you have no problem understanding this guy. because I have brainwashed you, basically. So if you ever come to one of my seminars again and you hear this, don't yell out, jazz and swing fans like jazz music. That was kind of, would ruin the joke, or they ruin the experience for everyone else. So we need a reference. Our brain needs something to put, or a hook to put on to hang the experiences on. I'd like to give you another example of how stupid we actually are. I will switch the entire day. I will switch between Pro Tools and the PowerPoint there. And here I have, you see? Yeah. I have 4 seconds of pink noise. If I highlight this. This is what we use to calibrate the room, or to speakers, or to microphones, or whatever. So now you all heard this beautiful pink noise. It's so nice. We have the same reference now. This is what the room sounds like. This is what your position sounds like relative to the 2 speakers and the subwoofers. So we have a good reference. Now I will trick your brain. I will make 2 copies of those 4 seconds of pink noise, and I will remove, with a little filter, I will remove 3 kilohertz from the middle part. So we have the first part, and we have the last part. And they sound identical. Agree? Yes. So now we will hear all 12 seconds, including the middle 4 seconds where I have removed speech intelligibility. And this will prove how fast your brain will adapt to the new reality, to the new reference. 4 seconds, it will take you 4 seconds to hear the pink noise, or whatever the pink noise is that's missing. Listen to this. Could you hear the difference? On the last part, you heard the 3 kilohertz that was missing before. It's not that I added them. It's because your brain is adding them to the mix. Because we are craving for those 3 kilohertz, for that speech intelligibility to be there. So when it's missing, our brain is tuning up the sensitivity of 3 kilohertz, because we know it's supposed to be there somewhere. So turning it up. And when it's back, it's too much. We hear all that 3K coming out of the 3 kilohertz. So now you know what's going on. I'll do it again. So now you can ignore that the 3 kilohertz is missing in the middle. So let's do it again and see if you can ignore it. No. Am I right? You couldn't ignore it. You were fooled again. So if you work with the console with a display and an EQ, you could make yourself that little trick that you take whatever sound source. It could be music, it could be vocal, it could be pink noise. Then you remove 3K and you let go of the knob, and you look away and you turn it back up to 0. And see if you can hit 0, if you can hit where it was unity. I will bet you dos cervezas that you cannot hit the 0 without looking, because our brain is fooling us. The point here is that we cannot trust our brain. We need pink noise. We need smart systems to calibrate the rooms. We need systems like smart, or we need Adamson speakers that we can rely on, that they are super linear, because we cannot rely on our brain. We also need microphones that we can rely on, that are consistent. Every microphone you pick up should sound the same, because you cannot remember a guitar sound or a piano sound or a drum kit sound. You cannot remember it from the day before. You can only memorize less than 4 seconds. then you have to start over. So with tools, sharp tools, consistent tools that sound the same time after time, year after year, you can rely on the microphones to give the audience a good experience because you don't have to do a lot of work. If you're working in a theater and you're listening to the same dialogue night after night, you would get, there's a risk that you will get fatigue. If you're working in a recording studio or in a live stage and you're tired, you maybe have corona or you have, no, you wouldn't, but if you're working and you're tired, you get fatigue on your hearing as well, and then you are losing that ability to judge on the 3K. Maybe you will reduce 3K because it's irritating your ears. It's hurting you. So you will turn down the EQ at 3K. Have you ever tried mixing? How many here mix music in studios? Some. I have done it quite a bit, and I have been working in studios with on a budget, so we had all the night sessions. So I was working at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning on making a mix, and then when I heard it after sleeping, I was going, oh my God, what was I thinking? Because it sounds really, really horrible. What I learned was that have a lot of breaks and listen to other mixes that you know, that you can recognize, or pink noise, just to reset, just to get your balance right again, because you get fooled by this reference, lacking of reference. All right, when we record the band here, we will have references. We will have microphones or placements, and we will move the microphones or change microphones or whatever we want. And then we will jump back and we will listen, not to the pink noise, but we will listen to the previous recording. So we always have a reference. What did it sound like before? Because, yeah, we cannot remember that sound. So pink noise is, well, it's very steady. You see it has a lot of stable levels. But what doesn't have stable levels are the transients, like all the higher frequencies, all the fast bursts of energy. They are very, very different. On a grand piano, they are very, very complex. The transients, the microphone needs to be able to pick up the transients and react on not just the first transient, but on the second transient as well. I have this analogy that if you record an acoustic guitar with 6 strings and you have a slow microphone, it will record the sound of the guitar with the 6 strings. But if you have a fast transient response microphone, it will record every string, all of them, and that will give you the sound when it comes out of the speaker. So there's a difference between where is the sound created. Is it created on the way in to the recording system or on the way out of the recording system? Where I come from, we record on the way out of the system. We record everything as detailed, as separate in the system as we can, and then we mix it afterwards. And that's just a philosophy, or that's just a method of working. It's not right or wrong, but that's just one way of doing it. And to demonstrate the transient pickup abilities of a microphone, I have created this little instrument here. It's very, very complex, and I have copyrighted it, so you cannot even take pictures of it. It's a transient response maker. It sounds really, really awful, but it is really good for picking up transients or for testing microphones or speakers or wireless systems, anything that needs to be picking up transient and delivering all the transients. It's also known as the key ring test. It's a little easier with keys, but this is much more fun and it's much louder. So it challenges the microphone much more. If I go like this, you hear distortion, right? That's because the build pack and the system is not really made for this kind of instruments. But this microphone here, that's a shotgun microphone. It should very well pick up these transients all the way around it. So I would like to do an experiment, but I can't do this by myself. So I need a volunteer. Do we have a volunteer, someone who will help me? You put your hand up, I saw you. You didn't? I saw your hand. I'm sure I saw your hand. Can you help me? Yeah. It's not that difficult.
So I just go like this?
Yeah, you just go like this in front of the microphone. Yeah.
Is it on?
Yeah, a little distance.
Like this?
Yes. And see, this is really important because if you hold it like this, it sounds like a German microphone. You have to hold it like this.
All right. So like this?
Yes, that's perfect. So I will mute it and record a little test. I think that's good. And then take it away. Fantastic. And we'll just listen. You can't go yet. You're not done.
All right.
So we agree that we don't have the distortion that we had before when I was putting it on my headset. So that's fantastic. So we know that it can pick up the transients on axis in front of the microphone. But what we claim at DPA is that our transient response is the same all over the microphone. So now you were about 30 centimeters away. That's about here. That's fantastic. So now you have to keep that distance all the way around the microphone while you're shaking it. Around here, the capsule is here. You think you can do that? Actually, there's an easier way. You just stay there, and I'll turn the microphone. How's that?
All right. Yeah, I think it's easier.
That's easier.
Yeah.
Now you need to mute my microphone while we do this, because otherwise this distortion that will come into the speakers, and we will hear that in the recording. Yeah. Cool. Not just yet. I will start the recording, like so. There we go. That's good. Normally, I would have a little shock mount on this. I'll just take this part here. I would have a little shock mount because directional microphones are more sensitive to handling noise, wind, pop, and handling noise. So we might hear, because I heard that the mic stand was making a little noise, so we might hear some rumbling. But the important thing is the transients. You can put that down, you're done. What's your name? Gianpiero. I didn't get that right. Thank you very much for your help. It sounds like this. That's not really good. But you get the point, right? That the transient remain the same all over. It's just the level of them that is reduced. So we have the same sonic character of the microphone no matter which way we are pointing it. It's just louder and softer. In a more scientific way of showing this, I'll jump back to the PowerPoint here, is using pink noise as a sound source. When we have, where is it? Sorry about that. I'm jumping in my presentation. We have to cut that out. Anyway, when we are looking at polar patterns or pickup patterns of microphones, we are talking about a lot of different characteristics, all the way from omni to figure of 8. If we do this experiment in a controlled environment with pink noise all around, it sounds like this. That's an omni microphone, so the level is the same all the way around. If we take the shotgun microphone, it sounds like this. And the reason why it's not just picking up sound from the front, but also from the rear, is because of the way that we built shotgun microphones. You call them shotguns here as well? Yeah. I was held back in the airport with these, and they asked, "What do you have in your hand luggage?" And I was just about, no. Very directional microphones. Microphones. Okay. That's fine. I didn't mention that name. When we are building microphones, we are starting out with an omni microphone. This is an omni microphone. We have a diaphragm. Can you see my pointer? Or I can point here, actually. Here is the diaphragm, and this cone here is the backplate. Electrified backplate. And the reason why it's drawn like that is that's what it looks like in these, and this is where I come from. The backplate is shaped like that. So that's me doing PowerPoint. Please bear with me. But this is an omni microphone. You see that we have a closed chamber. We have, I can put this down for now. We have a chamber here that has a static air pressure. The diaphragm in front of the chamber, or in front of the back plate on the chamber, is reacting relative to the air pressure outside. So it doesn't really matter which way I turn this microphone. The air pressure change here will be the same no matter which way it turns. So the microphone is basically picking up sound evenly from all sides. Omni microphone. When we are making directional microphones, we are the optimal directional microphone is a microphone that has even openings from both sides. We have the diaphragm here. We have sound coming from. We have a backplate here, imaginary black backplate, and we have sound coming from over here. So the way that a condenser microphone works is that when we are moving the diaphragm closer to the backplate, we have a higher level on the output of the microphone. When we're moving the diaphragm away from the backplate, when the sound pressure, if I go back to the omni microphone here, when the sound or air pressure is lower outside than it is inside, the diaphragm will move outwards, like a balloon. It will move away from the backplate. And when the distance between the pre-polarized, the pre-powered backplate and the conductive diaphragm, when that is increasing, the output level of the microphone is decreasing. So less air pressure here means less output here. Higher air pressure, diaphragm moving inwards, higher output. It's in total sync. So, if we go back to this one here, we have the same thing. We have the sound coming from over here, pushing the diaphragm towards the backplate, higher output. If the sound pressure was coming from over here, we would have a negative output on the microphone. So we have a positive and a negative side. If we turn that around, we have the same air pressure on both sides of the diaphragm, which means that there is no difference. There is no output. The diaphragm is standing still. This is the figure-of-8 microphone, and that's the most directional microphone that we can have, because a microphone's directivity is measured on the input from the side. So if the input on the side is the same as the input on the front, or the output you could say, then we have an omni microphone. If the input on the side is a minimum, like it is here, it's 0, then we have a figure-of-8 microphone, and everything in between. If I want to make this in between, I want to make this a cardioid microphone, I could take the omni microphone, where we have the same sound pressure from the side, and combine that with the figure-of-8 microphone. We would have the positive from the figure-of-8 and the positive of the omni. Put together, we would have twice the signal from the front compared to the signal from the side, where we only have the omni contribution. From the rear, we have the negative from the figure-of-8. So we have the plus from the omni minus the figure-of-8. The output equals 0. So you see, that's the polar pattern of a cardioid microphone. And that is a very, very simplified way of saying how easy it is to make a cardioid microphone, or a switchable polar pattern. Because what you can actually do, you can change the balance between the omni and the figure-of-8. And the more you put in the figure-of-8, more you put that into the mix, the more you get this little back lobe. Because the objective was to get 0 input from the side. If we go out here to the wide cardioid, which is the extreme in the directional microphones, we have very, very little pickup from the side, or very little reduction in the pickup from the side. And we get more and more and more and more reduction. So figure-of-8 is mostly, or the most directional, and omni is the least directional. But when you want to do this little trick with the two diaphragms, there is this problem that the two diaphragms are in the way of each other. Every time you put a microphone capsule or anything, basically, in the sound field, you change the sound every time you do something acoustically around the capsule. So putting two diaphragms on top of each other changes the sound of both of them. So this is only in theory if you want to have a flat, transparent frequency response. You have to do it differently if you want to maintain that frequency response. And the way that we are doing it at DPA, we are doing it acoustically. We have the sound coming from the front, making an omni microphone, but if we open to the back, to the rear of the diaphragm, and let sound come in from the rear, sound coming in here, it is canceling the sound coming from the front. So if we can time this, so the sound coming around the microphone is out of phase, precisely out of phase with the sound coming through the microphone, then there will be no movement on the diaphragm, the pickup will be 0. And this is what we do. We do it acoustically, so we can control all the frequencies, so we don't change the sonic character of the microphone from the side to the front. So we have the same consistency around the microphone. And that's really handy when you put it, let's say, on drums. Because yes, this is a tom mic. It's there to pick up the sound from the tom, but it's also picking up sound from the others. Lower, yes, but still we want the same sonic character of the cymbals to be picked up in the sound, unless we are starting with gates and triggers and all these workarounds to make it sound like drums. When you just use the microphones with a natural pickup, everything will just sound natural. You will just add to the instrument. That's very convenient. All right. We are only talking condenser microphones because dynamic microphones are a totally different monster. They work in a different way than condenser microphones. A dynamic microphone has a coil, a moving coil, glued to the diaphragm, which makes the diaphragm relatively heavy, heavier than the diaphragm on a condenser microphone. So when you have something that is really heavy, you can't move it as fast as you can if you have something that is really lightweight. So there's a limit to how fast the diaphragm on a dynamic microphone can move. And speed here equals frequencies. So a dynamic microphone has, in most cases, a roll-off around 8 kilohertz, or maybe even before. There is sound, there is movement, overtones and so on, and sometimes the manufacturers, they use equalizers inside the microphone to boost specific frequencies to get more high-frequency information. But physics gives the microphone or tells the microphone that there are limits. If you then, on top of that, take that a dynamic microphone is a velocity microphone, meaning that the amplitude is depending on the speed of the movement. If it moves fast, it has a high velocity. It moves fast because it gets a loud input. If it gets many loud inputs, it will move fast both back and forward. It would have a high frequency with a high amplitude. But the condenser microphone, as I said before, has the maximum output when it has a maximum input, maximum sound pressure level. Dynamic microphone has the maximum output when it is right at the middle. When this motor, dynamo, is moving, this coil is moving over the magnet, it is accelerating. Let's say that it starts from out here. It's accelerating all the way through the middle point where it's now at the peak, at the top output. It has the highest speed. Then it's deaccelerating down to the stop because it's slowing down. The tension on the diaphragm is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it stops at the end point, and that's where the output is 0. Now we have no output because there is no movement. And then it changes direction, and it makes a negative output. So when we have the highest level where the air pressure is pushing the diaphragm to the innermost, we have 0 output. So then the output starts again, moving outwards, and then the output phase reverse, and then moving inwards. So that means that a dynamic microphone is 90 degrees out of phase with real world. So if you put a dynamic microphone and a condenser microphone next to each other, and you record something simple as a sine tone, you would see that they are shifted 90 degrees. So all of you live guys, how many here use both dynamic and condenser microphone on the same instrument? You're a liar. Everyone does that. Everyone does. Everyone has a minimum of 1 dynamic microphone on the drum kit. Some have 2. A lot of sound engineers, they have a dynamic microphone and a condenser microphone on the kick drum, and a dynamic and a condenser on the snare drum, right? Yeah. The condenser microphones are typically the overheads and the hi-hat. And then you use dynamic microphones. Some even do it on the toms. But the paradox here is that if you use 2 microphones with a phase shift on the same sound source, you get a phase problem. You get, yeah, and I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm just saying that it's a problem or it's an issue that you have to work with. It could be a good sound. It could be perfect. It could be an effect. I sometimes use it on a guitar cabinet, condenser and a dynamic, and then I blend the two microphones depending on which character I want to get out of it, unless I want to get exact character of the guitar player's sound. But it is an effect. You can use it, and you can choose to use it, or you can choose not to. We rarely see dynamic microphones used in an orchestra, classical orchestra, like overheads in an orchestra, because in a classical orchestra we want to have all the fine details, and we would like everything to be as close to in phase as possible. I compare the drum kit or the rock stage, but here the drum kit as an orchestra, a classical orchestra. I have my main pair, that's my overheads. They pick up the orchestra, and then I have spot mics on the different instruments to bring them up, to bring them a little closer to the audience if I have to. It's evident that these microphones are as close to in phase as possible. Otherwise, when I bring up one of the spot microphones, it will sound different from the main pair from my overheads. So when I use that technique, it's very important that they are in phase, that they are identical. So that was the difference between cardioid and omni microphones, and the difference between condenser and dynamic microphones. There are many more microphones, ribbon microphones and charcoal microphones, and so on, so on, so on. Dynamic and condenser seems to be the most known out there. So what does it mean that they are inconsistent off-axis? When I say that we make a lot of effort in making the sound consistent all the way around, what are the consequences if you're using microphones that are not consistent off-axis? And I have this little experiment here, or this little demonstration. If we have, if we show this, you heard it before, or a version of it. That's the cardioid. That's pink noise all the way around. It has the same character all the way around. If we have a microphone, let's say a dynamic microphone, where the frequency response is different from the different octave bands, then the microphone, the output of the microphone will sound like this. So depending on which angle to the microphone your instrument has, it has a different pickup. So if you're using two microphones and they're pointing in different angles, let's say that you put one on top of the snare, one on the bottom of the snare, they will both pick up the hi-hat and the kick drum, but they will pick it up differently. So the sum of those two will give you a different kick drum sound. So that's just a example of what goes wrong when the microphone doesn't have a consistent pickup pattern. The shotgun microphone that we were looking at here has a consistent pickup pattern, or almost consistent. At 140 degrees, that means behind the microphone, it has a little dip here around 3K. But that is impossible for us to remove that, because we are so much concentrating on these lines should not cross. It should not be more sensitive at 400 hertz at 90 degrees than it is at 60 degrees. Because if that is more sensitive here, then the microphone will change character when the person is walking around the microphone or the car is driving by the microphone or whatever you are recording. So the consistency, the frequency, the parallel lines here shows the consistency in the microphone's sonic character all the way around. Not everything, it's just a picture. It doesn't show you what it sounds like, it just shows you what it measures like. You have to listen to the microphone, always. You cannot judge a microphone on the specifications. Never. That proves the old experiment that the engineers did back in the B&K days, that all measurement microphones do not have the same sonic character as the ones that they chose to work with. Okay, do we have any questions on this? No? Are you sure? Yes, we have a question. Yes. Does the microphone have distortion? Yes. They all equipment have distortion. It depends on where this distortion is introduced. When we are talking about distortion, we are talking about a 1% distortion, because 1% distortion is audible. Less than 1% is hardly audible, like you cannot hear that. I have a little experiment here that will show you what distortions sound like on some microphones. I hope I can find it. I can't find it. Don't know why that always disappears for me. But anyway, when we made one of our microphones, one of the experiments that we did back in the days, we recorded something very complex as a tambourine with two microphones, and we listened to the output of those. I would love to play that to you. Because that will, okay, I can't find that. That will illustrate what distortion sound like on the microphones. I have one example actually, but that's jumping a little ahead. But that could be now. When we made the kick drum microphone, the 4055. How many here have tried the kick drum microphone? Quite a few. That's fantastic. When we made that, we were very concerned about how the market would react to the kick drum microphone, because we were introducing a microphone to the market that had very, very little, or actually hardly any sound. It has the same flat frequency response as the shotgun microphone and all the other microphones that you know. But what the market was used to see was kick drum microphone with an EQ, with a built-in EQ. So when we came out with a flat frequency response microphone, we were it was with sweaty hands, because how would the market react to it? And we are so happy that the sound engineers, that you guys, you acknowledge that you are the sound engineers. You don't want the microphone manufacturer to make the sound for you. We would like to make our own sound. I have this philosophy that I am a sound engineer. My job is not to make sound. My job is to make the drummer sound louder, not to make him sound better. I can help him, yes, but my job is just to make him louder. And if I use microphones like this, it is really difficult just to make it louder because someone has taken a decision in how the kick drum sound should be. So when we did the development of this microphone, we did look at other microphones, very well-known microphones on the market. And we found that these 3 dynamic microphones are by far the most common microphones on the market, and the condenser microphone is also very often seen on kick drums. And then we read the microphone specifications of the other manufacturers, and one of the things that we were very curious about was this. Because the dynamic microphone, the Beta 52, on their website, they say that they have a 1% distortion. Total harmonic distortion less than 1% at 174 dB. Does anyone here know how loud 174 dB is? It's extremely loud. We cannot make that sound consistent. We can make a sound that is 174 dB with a spark or a gunshot or something really loud, but we cannot make the same sound again and again and again. We cannot rely on NASA to make rocket launches every time we want a new microphone to be measured. So we don't know how they have measured that. So I asked a colleague of mine who used to work with Shure and asked him how did they produce 174 dB? And he said they never did. They calculated it. And that's not the way that we do at DPA, because you cannot calculate we don't believe that you can calculate something like a maximum SPL at 1%. So we have made a system where we can produce a very loud sound inside a chamber, and we can make that consistent. We can make up to 164 dB. That's how loud we can make it, and that's how we measure our microphones. And we can measure that this one goes at least to 164 dB without distortion. So when we did this, we compared all these different microphones, and we compared them in exact same position. We had this cross laser that we made sure that all the microphones, they were placed in the exact same position. And you see there's a lot of cables going inside the kick drum. It's because we had different microphones inside the kick. We had a reference microphone that we could always measure the sound pressure level of each kick hit, so we could find comparable pattern of the drummer. He's a very, very good drummer. And he played the same pattern to a click track, but we had the measurement microphone, so we could find exact same velocity every time, so we knew that we were comparing microphones against each other. Because we also learned that if you don't have the microphones in the exact same position, you cannot compare them. If you just shift like 2 microphones on the snare drum, 2 identical microphones on the snare drum with 2 centimeters between them, they sound different. I saw this experiment once on YouTube. This guy, I think he had 20 microphones around the snare drum, different types of microphones, and then he played on the snare drum and he compared the microphones. And it made me laugh, because they had different distances to the snare, they had different height, he didn't notice where the capsule was, and of course the snare sounds very different around, so you cannot compare microphones that way. One of our customers, when we were introducing the 4055, he came back to me and said, well, he had the 4055 in a shootout, and they didn't like the sound of the 4055, and that was question number 1. The sound of that microphone, because there's no sound in that microphone. So what did you do? And then he showed me a picture of a kick drum where he took away the resonator skin, the front here. He took that out, and then he put 6 microphones in the kick drum. And then he compared the 6 microphones. And that's not going to work, because the kick drum sounds so different from position to position. We will do that experiment in a minute, so you can hear how much is happening when you move the microphone around. That's the whole idea with these microphones. So anyway, we made sure that all these kick drums microphones, they were in the exact same position, the velocity was the same, the pattern was the same, so they were comparable. And this is what they sound like. These are all sales materials to list the differences between the DPA and the D112, for instance. But there should be sound examples here. Just took it a little down. You would say that D112 might not be in its optimal position, because who puts it like that on an angle? Not many people. I see 9 out of 10 times when someone is using that, they put it straight into the hole. And that raises two questions. Why straight into the hole? Why do you want to block the hole with a microphone? You change the sound of the kick drum, because you have a very big microphone in the sound field. And why straight on? We learned on the next one that microphone has a relatively large form factor. So it changes the sound of the kick drum acoustically. When you're standing next to the kick drum, it changes the sound when you put the microphone there. Then we learned that putting it straight onto the hole where there's a lot of wind coming out, a lot of energy, that adds a lot of pressure to the diaphragm, because it's going straight to the diaphragm. That alone gives a low frequent sound. Just the wind gives a sound. And then you remember this shock mount. We didn't have a shock mount. The shock mount inside that is of a quality that the vibrations of the stage floor, of the riser, of the whatever you have it on, that also makes the sound that you heard from here. So the wind and the vibration on a directional microphone gives us maybe 50% of the kick drum sound. Then the rest is the EQ. And that's why we angle it, by the way. That's why I came from. We angle it so we don't get that air pressure straight to the diaphragm. So the air pressure is passing the diaphragm without creating an overpressure straight to the diaphragm. So I will recommend always to keep whatever microphone, the Beta 52, the D112, whatever, the D6, whatever microphone you're using, angle it just a bit, because then you will get less wind problems on the diaphragm. It sounds like this. That was very short. And that brings me back to your question about distortion. Did you hear the distortion? You want to hear it again? And we know that it is not the overload of the console. We know that it's not that particular hit being louder than the previous one, because we have the reference microphone. We have an analyzing the exact sound of that kick drum. You have another question?
Don't have any distortion, no?
Sorry?
Don't have any distortion, the microphone.
Yes, that was distortion. And we don't know.
I refer when
With noise?
when you song
Yeah?
and do it.
So noise? Do we have that on that microphone?
It can distortion the voice. The voice, error.
Yeah? No. Can you do it in Spanish? Someone can translate?
give some instruction because the microphone has some.
Okay. Misunderstood the question. I just remember this because they claim that they have 174 dB sound pressure level handling, and I would like to put a big question mark on that because it wasn't. It was distorting, and it was not 174 dB. That simple hit. Just to make this part of the presentation final, we have the D1 or D6, and now this is your reference with that much low end. And when you come from the D6 to the 4055, it will sound nasal because now the mid-range is coming back because you are adjusting for it. Anyway, that is just a comparison of the kick drums. We will do them live when we introduce Pablo on the drums. Should we have a little break? Are you ready for a break? That's a lot of talking, I know. Sorry. 15 minutes? Thank you. Nice to meet you. I'm having a good time.
Si lo dejo aquí, me molesta mucho. Lo dejo ya para...
La vea, la dejamos aquí y eso.
Yo tengo otras tres.
¿Y en la que está? ¿Dónde está? Ahí. Vale. Estaría macheado de los 4 y 4 de vale, pero...
Aparte sí te digo yo, jueves, bueno, sí, de aquí hasta la fiesta. Solo te puedo sentar en la mesa, no está cualquier moderador.
Hello, yes. I'll just talk to them. 10 minutes. All right. Close the curtains. It's super secret what we're doing here. It's about microphones and placement of microphones. This last part here will be about placement of the microphones. Now we know about the different types of microphones, what they do, and the pros and cons. So now we will talk about where to place them. And one good example I find really interesting is the human voice. Where do we put the microphone on a person speaking, singing, in a theater or in film or at conferences or basically anywhere where we have a person and a microphone involved. So in order to do that, in order to find out what is the radiation pattern, what is the radiation pattern, the directivity of any instrument. We know, I don't know if you know, but a violin has a very, very distinct radiation pattern. It has one tone coming out of the rear and another tone coming out of the front. So we will have, that's a reason why the violins are always, or almost always, on the left side of the conductor. Because when a violinist is playing, this sound, the natural sound, is radiated this way. On a grand piano, it's radiated this way because it's reflecting on the lid and reflecting on the floor. So if you're on the back side of a grand piano, it sounds different from when you're in front of the piano. So every instrument, every sound source, including the voice, has a radiation pattern. The human voice, if we look at the level of the human voice, we see that it's normalized to 0, to the front of the person. This is an experiment that we did in an anechoic chamber with 10 people, 10 random people, 7 guys and 3 girls. And we normalized the level to the front, and then we had microphones all around, and we measured what is the reduction in level when you go around a person. And it's not a surprise that we have the highest level in front of a person. Right. But what is even more interesting when we start analyzing on it is the frequency response around the person. The blue and the green are the higher frequencies, and the red and the orange are the lower frequencies. So you could say that the higher frequencies, they are radiated you could say that the consonants are radiated in front of the person, and the vowels are all the way around. So the vowels are lower frequencies, they are omni, almost like a subwoofer, it's omni, and the consonants, the higher frequencies, like the tweeter, is directional. That's the same thing as what we know. If we then turn it around, we put the microphone around the person, this angle, we see that we have higher level just below, doesn't work, just below the person, down here. So the level it's louder down here than it is here. So when you move the microphone down, you get more level. That's weird, but that's the truth. When you raise, I don't want to do this, when you raise the microphone to up here, you reduce the level. And that's weird, but that's true. And then if we look at the frequency response, we see that the reason why we have more level down here is because down here are some frequencies that are totally taking over. Those vowels are taking over. The consonants are drowned, the green one are way in here. Up here, is that my microphone doing that? No? Bad frequencies. Up here, we have a very nice balance between consonants and vowels. Down here, it's a very bad balance. So speech intelligibility is better up here than it is down here, if we look at it this way. So, what we did, Another experiment. I'll try to stand here. We place this microphone in front of the person, 1 meter away from a test person. 1 meter because that was pre-COVID, that was considered social distancing. That is our interpretation of a natural voice. When we have a conversation with someone, that's how we interpret this natural. This sounds natural. So that's 0. That's our reference. That's our pink noise, if you like. Then we place a microphone on the forehead, and then we measure the difference between the reference and the new position. So this is not what it sounds like up there. It's just the difference between the on-axis and the forehead position. We place one over the ear and measure the difference. We place one as a headset, like the one that I'm wearing, and measure the difference. And we place a couple. We actually had 3 different on the chest, and we have an average of those, and we measure the difference. The conclusion is that, no, let's hear it first. I'm jumping ahead. We hear it. No?
I used to feel so uninspired.
So now that's our reference. That's our pink noise. The ear position.
I used to feel so uninspired.
And you hear that it's now a little duller because we are actually moving behind the sound source, and we are, like I am behind the speakers, the same with the microphone. It's behind the mouth.
I used to feel so uninspired.
A little more, but still a little dull compared to the forehead. And the chest.
I used to feel so uninspired.
And I purposely talked in between them because you have those 4 seconds to remember the sound, so I wanted to disturb you in there. The conclusion is that the forehead sound is almost linear. It is almost identical to our reference, to what we consider normal. The ear position is losing all the higher frequencies behind the sound source. The headset, we have a little more 1K, a little more of the attack, but we are still losing higher frequencies because I'm still behind the sound source with my microphone. But the worst position of all of them is the chest position. That's really, really bad. So no, don't ever put the microphone there again. Never, because it compromises speech intelligibility. But of course, we have to do that. We see this peak on all of them, all of the recordings. And that is a product of the microphone being placed on a surface. The microphone is now turned into a boundary layer microphone, or a PZM microphone. When we place the microphone on a surface, we increase some of the frequencies. If it's a large surface, like the lid of a grand piano, it's a very large area that we increase the level of, like a large frequency area. When we are placing it on something as small as the forehead, it is only around 800 hertz that we get that little boost. When we place it on something bigger, like the chest, it's a little wider. So we get more of the same frequencies, or the neighboring frequencies. The reason why I'm saying this is because that is just proving that, sorry, jumping ahead again, just proving that there's no sound, such sound as a chest sound. There's many sound engineers, especially in film. We had some film people over here. They refer to this, the chest position, as chest sound. And some of the young guys who haven't heard about this, they would say, well, it's the chest sound is coming from the chest. But there's no sound coming from the chest. You feel vibrations. If you feel your own chest while you speak, you can feel some vibrations, but that's an airflow. That's not sound. Well, there is tiny little bit of sound because there is a vibration, so there is a sound, but the sound coming from the mouth is so much louder than the actually sound from the chest. We have 2 sound sources on the human body. This is one of them. No? Doesn't translate to Spanish. Good, we'll leave it there. If this was, if the 800 hertz was sound coming from the chest, it wouldn't be there, and it wouldn't be there or there. So it is the proof that it is a boundary layer effect that we are seeing. So anyway, listen to all the four examples again, and I will jump after the fourth one. I will jump back to the forehead position again because we have a tendency of adjusting as we go along, and we get used to that sound over there, so that's okay. But actually, when you then jump to the first one again, you hear how much you lost on the way. I have this analogy with the frog in a pot. If you put the frog in the cold water and you turn up the heat, it will stay there for a long time because it's adjusting to the heat. But if you put the frog in warm water, it will jump out immediately. So we are adjusting. Our brains are adjusting, so that's why I'm jumping back.
I used to feel so uninspired. 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 I used to feel so uninspired.
It even sounds louder because all that mid-range that we're missing is totally gone on the chest position. Well, it's not a problem if you know what you're doing. There are some conclusions here. If you know that this is a product of the microphone placement, it is not the microphone EQ, it's not the manufacturer that has made this EQ. It is the placement that does it. If you know that you have a microphone that is flat, that it has a flat frequency response, you can just take this EQ, you can make this EQ, and you can take this product and mirror it over this axis, and then you are back to normal. You're back to the reference point. It sounds a little dramatic to add 6 dB on 3 kilohertz and pull 6 dB on 800 hertz, and it is only a starting point. You need to listen. You need to listen to the actual person, but this is within plus minus what you have to do in order to get it back. What I always do and what I recommend others to do is to make a recording of the reference. Like have the actor or the presenter hold the microphone right here, right in front of him, and then speak for a minute or a half a minute or whatever. And then you put the microphone where you have to put it, in the wig or in the costume. And then you have the reference recording, and you will make the other one sound as the reference. Also on night number 15, where you are getting tired and you know what the singer is singing, jazz and swing fans, they like fast music, you know it by heart. You go back to the reference. What was it supposed to sound like 2 months ago? Because you could have changed the EQ or the position or the material or whatever, the wind protection. So it's not a problem if you know what you're doing. We have made a little cap that we can put on the microphones, a little high boost that will, we have a soft boost, it's pre-mounted on this one here, and if I put the high boost on it, I will acoustically get a little help to regain some of the high frequencies back. But you have to know what you're doing, because if you're putting that high boost on the forehead, you would have maybe too much of the high frequencies, especially on the neighboring actors. We have made, I'll jump this. This is an article on our Microphone University, we have on our website. If you scan this QR code, if you bring out your phones and you scan this QR code, it will take you straight to to the article on our website, and you will see a lot of the pictures that I used here and explanations. It's much more in depth in the article. And I saw some take pictures of the frequencies of the EQ. Once you're done here, we done? Yeah. This poster here, or poster or flyer, depending on your printer, scan that, and that will take you to this graphics, so you can download it and put it in the control room of the theater, or send it to the production manager or to the producer of the film. Say, this is what happens to speech intelligibility. The yellow marking here is the speech intelligibility. That's everything you need to know in the yellow field here. And this is nothing to do with DPA microphones. It relates to all microphones because this is placement. Just saying that if you're using Sennheiser or Sanken or whatever you're using, this will still apply. Okay, that was enough talk about people. Any questions about speech intelligibility and microphone placement? Yes?
You have measured the distance, the height.
Yeah.
When you put the microphone on the chest, there's enough sound here, it's not the same there.
Yeah. So we had three different, in the experiment, we had 3 different positions. We have 15, 20, and 25. And we had, what you saw here was an average of all those. That would see there's 30 microphones.
Do you think it's more natural here or far away?
The 2 things, because when you go further away, you lose level. That means that you introduce more of the room sound. When you go up here, you see actually on this one here, the lower one here, that one, that's the neck. That's right here, like in a tie. Or we once had a necklace microphone, like a necklace, where we hit the microphone inside. It's used often in film, in reality shows. They have the microphone here on a necklace, and that's the EQ of that one. So you see that it is. There's more of the low end. It's more dull on the necklace because it's shading from beard and from the face. So it's more natural down here. The perfect compromise, in my book, is the second, on a normal shirt, the second button right down here. So it's about 20 centimeters. That's the best compromise, but it's still not good unless you do the 3K and the 800 hertz. All right. Other questions to this? Good? I hope. I hope that's good. Now the band is eager to play some hi-hat to get on the stage. So you want to join me? So thank you very much. Pablo here will play drums for us. And I will record what Pablo is playing, and I will play it back to you. It's obviously, we have no shielding, we have nothing, so put your fingers in the ear while he's recording. I will record, and I will play back. I have the Pro Tools session. We will stay on the Pro Tools. Enough PowerPoint for one day, right? So I will mute my glass. It still sounds good. Yeah, still sounds good. And we still have the pink noise. Do we need to clear our ears just to... No, it doesn't work unless I unmute it. Yeah, that's nice. I love that sound. I'm weird, I know. Mute, hide, drums, boom. There we go. We have kick on an angle in the hole. Maybe you've seen it. We have snare top, 4099, snare bottom, 4099. And for those of you who don't know what a 4099 is, anyone here who doesn't know what a 4099 is? Anyone hasn't had it in their hands ever? You ever? Here. If you break it, you buy it. That's a $40.99. That's a miniature capsule. It's exactly the same capsule as the one I'm wearing here. 5mm capsule, holes in the back, sound coming through, directional, very directional. Question?
I was wondering why the snare bottom microphone are with that direction.
Because Nacho placed it. Blame it on Nacho. Well, I haven't placed it yet. We just threw the microphones on the drum kit. I have no preference, and I have no intention on putting my ear down there and listen to what it sounds like down there. I'm not going to do that. So I'm putting a microphone random, recording it, listening, moving it, listening, and then we will find out what we like the most. But I agree that this is this is not a good starting point. You pay attention here, and you, Nacho. Because what you do, you take the clamp. There are 12 different holders. One of our customers says, if you can dream the holder, it's there. So we have different holders. We put it here. There's a little rubber thing. You put it on the gooseneck. You choose how long you want the gooseneck, and then you take the lock, and you put it over, and now the gooseneck can move. You can actually also turn it. It's a little difficult, but you can. And then you can put it on the snare bottom. I will find the snare. It's right there. And I will go like that. More happy? Much better. I would like to discuss. Yeah, we'll do that later. First, my orchestra microphones, my AB microphones, my overheads. The TV people, they hate this position because it doesn't look like it's a balance. It looks like it's tilting, right? But I don't make sound for TV. I make sound for sound engineers or for drummers or for musicians, not visuals. So what I do, I ask Pablo, how close to your drum kit can I go with this? We discussed it, well, not a discussion, we talked about it, and you said this was okay. It could be a little low for some drummers, if they are wild, or if they have many cymbals, but I always have the dialogue with the drummer. Then I have this calibrated DPA measuring tape. It's fantastic, you should get one. And I measure 73 centimeters. Today, it's 73. Yesterday, it was 80, 85, 90. Depends on the drummer and the drum kit, on the level, on the distance to the snare. But the important thing is that I measure and I keep exact distance to the center of the snare. And then I measure the other one the same. It's a little too high. I can go down like this. Someone pushed it. It doesn't have to be that scientific, but it's just proving the point. The reason why I do this is because I want, in my final mix, I want this. You can sit. If it's, are you uncomfortable me being behind you? It's because I won't touch you much. I want the sound of the snare to arrive at the same time to the two overheads. When I know the microphone, they're consistent, they're DPA mics, so they have the same sensitivity. So the output of the microphones are identical when the sound arrives with the same level, the same time, same phase at the two overheads. So this placement here will give us a good representation of the entire drum kit with these two microphones, like the two microphones in Royal Albert Hall or in the opera here or wherever you're using two overheads. So, Pablo, will you play for us? You're here anyway, so yeah, might as well. So, I will just record everything, but the point is that we will just listen to the overheads. These two babies down here. everything. Yeah, baby. And that was just the overheads. I'm soloing those 2 tracks, 2 wide cardioids. And those of you in the middle, you could hear perfectly that we have a nice stereo. We have the floor tom over here, and we have the hi-hat over here, right? So it sounded pretty much recorded as it sounded acoustically, right? It should. If you subtract the room and the distance and so on, it should be very, very close. I'm using wide cardioids, not omnis, because I don't want the ceiling. I don't want to pick up the entire room, but I want to pick up as much of the drum kit as I can. With the wide cardioids, which is a little more open than a normal cardioid, I get an area here around this side of the drums, overlapping the snare drum, and get the other area with the other overhead. If I was using cardioids, normal cardioids, I would have a lot of hi-hat, very little of the tom, of the middle tom. And on this one, I would have a lot of the floor tom and the cymbal, very little of the hi-hat, of the snare drum. So by using wide cardioids, I get the full picture. And I can go very close. If I was using cardioids or even shotguns, I would have to go far away to pick up that area because of the shape. So I like, and that's again my preference, I like to have the microphones as close to the sound source as I can, and then choose the wider pickup pattern. That will give me a full picture. So that's my starting point. That now I know that I have a good representation of the entire drum kit. If I wanted even wider stereo, I could go out here with this and have less of the snare, more of the hi-hat, and the same thing with the other one. I could go further out, depending on my preference. This is what we chose to go with today. Okay, I don't EQ that. I could add a high-pass filter if I have too much rumble or something, but I will not use EQs. I will have everything as flat as possible. So next thing up is the kick drum. I placed the kick drum on an angle just inside the hole. We are fortunate that we have a hole so we can demonstrate what it sounds like inside and outside. But sometimes there's not a hole, then you have to find the good position where you get the sound that you want. The kick drum is, can I borrow one of your sticks? The kick drum has a beater head on one side here, where we're hitting the kick drum, but it also has the resonator head. This also adds to the sound. All the heads have different tones, again back to the snare experiments. All the heads have different tones depending on where we are or where we pick it up. We have higher frequencies or faster movements around the edge of the drum, and then we have lower frequencies, slower movements at the middle of the drum. So the low frequencies is coming from here, and the high frequencies are coming from here. But the point is that this is adding to the sound. There's a whole book about tuning kick drums, many books about tuning drums. The reference or the balance between the resonator head and the beater head makes a lot of difference. Like if there's the same tone, if they are both tuned to the same tone, we have a long note, we have a long tone. If we tune one up and the other one down, we shorten the tone. And then you can work with that, whatever tone you have. Here we have lower here and higher here. That gives this specific tone that we're looking for. The point is that I would like to pick up, I will see what happens in here. So Pablo will play a pattern with the kick drum in this position, you actually did. We could actually just listen to this. I save you the trouble. So you play exactly the same pattern. I told you. Now I will move the mic and point it right on the edge of the hole, because I want to pick up that sound as well. I want to have the sound of the hole. I get that because it's an open cardioid. I get sound from the side and I get sound from the front. But now I'm much closer to the resonator head. Just to hear what it sounds like. So play something, Pablo. I will just on record so we don't get too many files. If you want these files, let me know. If you want this Pro Tools session and you play with it when you come home and you in an environment where you know the speakers and you know the room, let me know. I'll send it to you. Anyway, kick drum. Exactly the same. Before, it sounded like this. And now, I'm not sure about the level if you hit it as hard, but we have less output, but we have more low end. Can you hear that? That we have a lot of that sound. Might not be what we're looking for. Thank you. So let's go inside. I know from the research we did on kick drum microphones that there are a lot of sound engineers, they prefer to have this Beta 91 on the floor inside the kick drum. And we also, I think you need to take it a little down again. Can you take it down just a little bit? And we also did some experiments where we put the 4055 on the floor in there. And I have to be honest and say I don't like that sound. It doesn't give me anything. It just sounds weird. So what we experimented with was raising that microphone inside the kick drum from high above the beater to below the beater or even on axis on the beater. And it makes a huge difference where we put the mic in there. Not so much the angle in there, that doesn't change anything, because when we are inside the drum, it's one big pressure chamber. Like we have the sound coming from all sides. Not the same pressure, so it sounds different on the side and up and down, but the angle of the microphone doesn't really change anything. So I will put the microphone in what I have experienced to be a very, very good all-round starting point. If I can get this mic in there. There we go. Can you see it from in there? And you can confirm that we are right in the middle? Right in the middle of the drum, pointing at the beater. Oh, I thought you wanted it, but thank you, I saved that one. Or Nacho saved it. He's paying for it. So, let's hear what it sounds like inside the kick. Remember what you played? Before on the hole, and inside, so you see why it's a good starting point. We have a lot of low end, and we have the attack that we like. We get the attack because we are close to the beater now, and we don't get all that airflow. So which of the three positions should we go with? 1, 2, or 3? 3. 3? Any objections? You say 4? Okay, 3. Maybe you had another suggestion. We could also, but we're running out of time. I talk too much. We could also experiment with what happens outside the drum if we're working with a drum kit without the hole. But trust me, try that where you if you put it very close to the rim, like out here or here, you would get a very, very thin kick drum sound. If you put it right in the middle, you get a very low-end sound. You do get a lot of spill from the rest of the drum kit because the kick or the rest of the stage, because the resonator skin is acting like one big reflector. In there's absolutely no spill from the rest of the drum kit. Good. Any questions on the kick drum? No. Tuning it is a different class. So, snare. All of you sound engineers, how many use 2 microphones on the snare? Everyone does that. And a dynamic on top and a condenser on the bottom, right? Yeah. We'll take that afterwards. So we have 2 microphones on top, not on top, on the snare. And the reason why you use 2 is because you saw someone else do it. I would say that there are more than 57 ways to mic a snare. The snare top has a tradition of being a dynamic microphone because there is a tradition, a very, very old tradition, that condenser microphones could not handle the sound level of the snare top. So you needed to put a dynamic microphone because the dynamic microphone, you remember, it was heavy, it was slow. It also has this built-in compressor because there is a limit to how fast it can move. And that when it reaches that limit, the output will roll off. So it doesn't, the output input is not linear on a dynamic microphone. So that's a very nice help for the sound engineers that they use a dynamic microphone because it gives you a little compression. We all know the sound of a dynamic microphone and a snare. It goes because it's compressing. So you can't handle condenser microphones, or the condenser microphones could not handle the sound pressure levels. But that changed now. Now with these microphones here, we can have 164 dB. We can handle the sound of a snare. Can your console handle the sound of a snare? That's the next question, because some of the cheaper consoles, they will distort on the input, even though you gain it down, you pad it, you do whatever. But because of the transients, they pass now. They are through the microphone, through the cable, into the consoles, and the consoles will distort like you heard my headset did. So that's the question. If you have a good console, you have a good microphone, you have good speakers, you can handle the snare. So when you use dynamic microphones on the top of the snare, and you don't get the higher frequencies. And how do we get the higher frequencies? Well, we pick it up from where they're coming from, that's below. And the level of the snares are much lower than the level of the top snare drum. So that can handle the higher frequencies. Introducing 2 different microphones, 2 different placements on the same sound source gives us some issues, like phase issues, timing issues, and so on. I'm not saying that the under-miking of the snare is not a good idea. Sometimes it's a fantastic idea. I use it myself for effects. Like adding, if I need a little reverb, that's a very easy way to get a very brilliant reverb, just using it to feed the reverb, if nothing else. But I'm using 2 identical microphones on the same sound source. I'm not phase reversing one because they are in phase. I know that there is a lot of discussion. Well, they're pointing in opposite direction, and the head of the snare is moving downwards, so it must be out of phase. But if you know a little about phase and wavelengths, you would know that a wavelength of the higher frequencies is maybe 3 or 4 or 5 centimeters. Has nothing to do with the position of the two microphones. When you're fiddling with the phase on the snare, it's mainly because you have 2 different microphones that it will change character. If you use a high-pass filter on the lower microphone, cut it off at, 500 hertz, maybe even higher, 1 kilo, and you toggle the phase shift, you will hear nothing. There will be no difference because the phase shifting on wavelengths, this length, it's not audible. You can't hear it. So that was just my little quest for using 2 microphones on the snare drum. But it sounds like this, both the top and the bottom. You can play the kick drum as well if you want. Is that easier for you? Kick and snare? Perfect. The snare top. You can hear the snares, you can hear the high frequencies, even though it's not pointing at the snares. Nice to have, but we don't really need it because up here we have all the... We have this mid-range. I'm behind the speaker, so you can tell me if I'm wrong. The microphone is pointing, can I borrow that again? The stick, yeah. If you imagine that this is the snare, the microphone is pointing here, right in the middle between the rim and the center, so it's pointing here. I want to have more overtones, I want to have more brilliance in my snare drum, and I don't use EQs. So what I do, I move the microphone to the rim. So now I'm out here with the microphone, right at the rim. I get 2 things. I get the overtones from the rim of the head, but I also have the microphone in a position where it's also picking up what's coming down here and this side. So can you play the same thing again? You want this? And we lost a lot of energy. Before. The low frequencies are gone now. So we have more ringing, we have more higher frequencies, and we have less lower frequencies, so we get more brilliant snare drum. Which of the 2 positions would you prefer? 2? And you would say 3? Yes? Good point. Let's try that. Did you hear the question? Or like that? Great question. Maybe not perfect for... But if you compare it, blend it with the overhead, it might be perfect. Or it could be a compromise, just in between. It doesn't have to be either or, it could be in between. We are right now working on an article about the velocity of the drums. Like how much movement do we have on the rim of the kick drum, on the snares, on the rack toms, when you hit the drums. And the first numbers that I got out of the experiments that they are doing is that we have 11 G on the rim. Like the force when you're hitting, when you're doing the rim shot, we have the force of 11 G. You know how much that is? That's extremely lot. Like just imagine putting your finger there. It's really, really heavy. That requires a lot of shock absorption of the microphones when you put the microphones on the rim. So there's a huge difference, should be a difference between mounting the microphones on the toms and mounting them on mic stands next to the drums. We won't do that experiment just today. I actually think, just listening to the rim shots, that I would like to go in between. So I'm just pointing a little more over the head, and it's not in your way, is it? No. Could also work with the level, with the distance to the toms, to the snares. We'll do that with the toms. I just put the microphones, or Nacho just put the microphones randomly on the toms, and we will hear the toms now. There. Comme ça. And you will play something, a groove. You can add the snare if you want, but no, use just the toms. One, two, three, 1, 2, 3. Perfect. I know, that was not your pattern. I know a lot of sound engineers that would start working on the EQ, right? But I don't do that. I work on the drums, I work on the microphones, and then when I'm my head against the wall, I would start working on the EQ. I am behind the speakers, but listening to the ragtime, I would like to have some more attack. I have too much the mid, lower mids. So I will do what I did before with the snare. I will point it to the rim. I kind of like the floor tom. Do you like the floor tom? Yeah. What do you, anything missing? Where would you attack with your EQ if you were that kind of a person that was using EQs? You wouldn't touch the EQ. Oh, my man. My man. Just for this, remember where it is, and we'll just because we want to and we can, we'll do the same with the other one. We point it at the rim, straight down. Might be the better way to angle it, I don't know. Straight down at the rim, and you do the same thing again. Remember what you did? That was the same one. Now and before. Was I right? Did we get more attack, more high frequencies? We like that better. Yeah. And the floor tom before, the one that we really liked, I have to go like this. And now. Nah. Too much. So the other one, this one on the rag tom and the other one on the floor tom. Agree? Yes. Just for the sake of experiment, let's do that. That recording. Yeah. Cool. Fantastic. Now the hi-hat. I should actually have recorded the overheads as we went along. But anyway, the hi-hat, there's not so much discussion about what microphone type to use on the hi-hat. Most people, they use a condenser mic. Again, the high frequencies, we don't want to lose the transients, so we use condenser microphones. See, there is a problem with the proximity effect. You know about the proximity effect. Typically on vocals, if you are very close with a cardioid or a supercardioid, you get a low-end buildup. If you go far away, it becomes thin. Proximity effect. That also appears on the hi-hat and on any drums, but it's more pronounced on the hi-hat because on the toms, it's more like a surface. It's more like a plane source that we are picking up. There's not so much proximity effect. But on the hi-hat, if I got too close, if I go way down here, I would get a sound of the hi-hat. It is really, really bad. But on the cymbals, we have the opposite as on can I borrow them again? On the drums, where we have the higher frequencies here and the lower frequencies here. On the cymbals, we have the lower frequencies here and the higher frequencies here. So it's all depending on where they are suspended. This is suspended in the middle, so we have the fastest movement here and the lowest and the slowest movement on the rim. That goes also for the hi-hat. So we have lower frequencies outside and higher frequencies inside. Here you go. So what I would start out, I will point the microphone right in the middle, maybe a little more straight down. No, I'd like to angle it. Reason why I angle it is because I want to have as little of this cymbal here and the rest of the drum kit basically in the reflections on the hi-hat. If I just go like this, I would have reflections into the hi-hat, right up into the microphone. If I go even worse, here, I see that a lot. I get the cymbal sound right down the hi-hat and right into the most sensitive part of the microphone, the end. So I go this way, if I'm allowed to. If there are too many cymbals, there might be some compromises that we need to take. So I could, right there, in the middle, as a starting point. So you play the hi-hat and kick and snare, I think. Yeah, do that. Perfect. We want to hear the hi-hat solo. You hear the proximity effect? You hear that? Because this microphone here is linear, it has the flat frequency response at 30 centimeters. So when I'm moving in to 5 centimeters, I get a lot of proximity effect. So the best hi-hat microphone is actually not a hi-hat microphone, but it is a vocal microphone. And the reason for that is that the vocal microphone is made so it's linear in 12 centimeters. So when I put this microphone close to the hi-hat, I get no proximity effect. I have this flat frequency response. But they would probably look weird at you if you put a vocal microphone on. But you could just take the vocal microphone, take it off, and now it's starting to look like but you could also even strip it down and just take the capsule and put that on here and put that on. So now you have a very, very close to the optimal. You can actually also go the other way around. You can take a shotgun capsule, the one that we did for the glass. If you want a very directional vocal microphone, just take the shotgun and put that on here. Now you have a very directional vocal microphone. You have a little issue that you need to work on that. But it could be done if you want. Yes. But anyway, we will stick with this. That's the 2012. That's the new cardioid. We will open it a bit. We will take it a little further away, and we will point it more towards the edge, or not away from the edge, to the center, because it was too crunchy. Depending on you, of course. It's your sound. I'm just here to make it louder. Remember? So, spill of the snare drum is also an issue. We want to have as little snare drum in the hi-hat microphone, and we want it to sound as natural as possible. So if I start EQing on the hi-hat microphone, I would change the natural sound of the snare drum. So I would like to not EQ on the hi-hat and not EQ more than I have to on the snare drum. So new position on the hi-hat. Now let's introduce the overheads as well. We are not using the other snare today. Take that out. So it's basically everything. Do your best. I just wish you good luck. That's almost everything. Next time we will introduce the toms as well. So hi-hat, the new position. And before. More crunchy, right? But listen to the snare drum. Oh, maybe not there, but there. And here. Didn't change sound, didn't change character. It was only the hi-hat that changed character. So that's what you get. The overheads still sound good. And we have the same sonic character of the hi-hat that we just produced with the closed mic. So basically, the overheads are picking up the entire drum kit the way that we want it. So if I was to, okay, why can't I do that now? No. I'll take the, give me 1 sec. Take everything out of record and just play. Overhead solo, and I will just add the kick drum. Very short. To get that oomph, if that's what we're looking for. If we were playing jazz, it might not be as much oomph as we wanted. So basically, we have done the entire drum kit with just 2 microphones. The sales guys, they hate me for doing that part. They want to sell the entire drum kit. But you can see what we get. And now, with the toms, should we add the toms? Just for fun? Take it away. Fantastic. We are really running out of time, so I have to. That's even with the tom mics closed. So, add tom mics. I think I'll turn it a notch down. Easy peasy. You can play with this session at home. Thank you, Pablo. Let's go on to Ben, guitar. I am using the same microphone on the guitar cab as I was using on the overheads. It's the wide cardioid. It's placed random, again, right into the speakers. We have 2 12-inch, right?
Sorry?
2 12-inch.
Yeah.
Yep, 2 12-inch speakers, and I'm placing it somewhere. They are a little off. No, they are in line. It's kind of hard to see. Yeah. What we will do here, we will record while I am moving the microphone, and then you have to memorize what I did. When I play back, then you can hear, or I can say it in the microphone as well.
Do you want a clean sound?
It's up to you. I want your sound. That's your sound. We have 2 different types of guitar players. There's one that sits behind the guitar cabinet and leave it up to the sound engineer to make it sound good. He can sometimes in the studio he will just put the amp rack. He has maybe 4 Marshall stacks, and the sound engineer puts 1 microphone on one of them. So he walks into the control room, and he's standing there in front of the nice Adamson speakers or the whatever they have in that control room, and he's playing, and they are EQing, and they're fiddling, the piddling, and doing his sound in there. He has no idea what it sounds like in the other room. And then there's the other guitar player. He puts the guitar cabinet on a stool or on an angle, something, and he listens to his instrument like the drummer. He tunes the instrument, he tunes the amplifier, and then he comes to someone like me and said, your job is to pick up that sound. I made my sound. I practiced for 2 years now. I want to sound like Eddie Van Halen, so you pick up that sound. So, we are right in between here because I am putting you on the limb. You will play, and I will move the microphone, and then we will listen afterwards. Okay? See, now it would be fantastic with a remote control here. You can start playing. Straight. "45 degrees. Back to straight. All right, it sounded like this. So obviously more brightness when we point straight into the speaker, and more dull or more mellow, if you like. Warmth is also an expression that some like when we point it to the side. So there's no right or wrong, there's just a difference. We'll leave it there, right? Because we have to move fast forward, right? We're being kicked out now? No, okay. So we'll leave it here. The bass does not have a single microphone, so we will not be doing anything else than listening to it when they play together. So now next up is Pablo II. Yes? Pablo II plays saxophone. And we have a saxophone track here. And I think you kind of know my way of working, that I place the microphone, I listen, and I move the microphone. Except that I have a pretty good idea of what's going on the saxophone. So that position there, right next to the bell, is my ending point. That's where we will end up. Weird. Why? Well, if you, like me, see a lot of dynamic microphones used on a sax. The saxophone player, he will have his ice cone-shaped microphone. He'll put it there, and he'll put it right there. Only one tone is coming out of the bell. That's the B flat, right? The rest of the sonic character, the rest of the tones, is a combination of all the valves and the bell. So the reason why I put it here is because I want to pick up the sound of the valves as well as on the bell. So it's over, maybe a little too low, but I'm trying to pick up the sound off axis. It's very close to the bell, so it's okay that it's off axis. And then point it at some of the notes down here. So we will have a very even representation of the saxophone. If you just do that without talking to the saxophone player, he would instantly go like that. That's how he hears himself. That's fine if it's bebop, bop, bop, if that's all he plays. But if you want to have, you're playing jazz, so you want to have the full spectrum, I would like to have the microphone over here. Like I said, with the violin, we have the radiation pattern to the right of the player. Same thing with the saxophone, we have the radiation pattern this way. So if you have us in the studio, I would not put the microphone on the saxophone, I would put it out here. I would probably use a wide cardioid to pick up the whole area. Again, the philosophy as the drums. I would not use two microphones. Phase relations, comb filtering, not good. If I use two microphones, I have them far away and they are ambience microphones. And then I have maybe a closer to pick up. Anyway, I talk too much. Let's hear this, the bebop sound. Mute, play. Fantastic. Sounds like this. If that's what you like, that's a perfect position. But I'd like to demonstrate what happens when we go out here to this position. It requires some education of the saxophone player, but I think they will understand when you play it to them. Taking this out. And you see the waveforms, we lose energy. And that's the consequence. But in my book, that's fine. But the downside, okay, I have to play it, right? Before? And now? More warmth, get more of those keys below on his right hand. Like it or not, but that's the consequences. The good compromise could be somewhere in between. We'll do the third one. Point it a little more upwards so we get a little more of this area. We still get the bell off axis, and we get these lower notes. They're louder. We'll get them off axis as well. I'm in a hurry. Don't want to get kicked out. And that sounds like this. I would obviously add a low-cut filter because we get this little rumble. And that's, again, because of the vibrations of when you place the microphone on the instrument. That gives us a little handling noise. So adding a low-cut filter, I think you're good to go. If you want to have that low-cut filter built in, there are two different versions of the XLR connector. There's one with the gray ribbon here that has a built-in low-cut around 80 hertz, third order low-cut. If you just use the standard adapter, the black one, it has no low cut, it goes all the way down to DC. Those are phantom power adapters because the miniature microphones we have on the saxophone and the one that I have here, they require only 5 volts, not 48 volts as all the pencil mics. And 5 volts because they are used on wireless systems. And they supply 5 volts normally. And if I wanted to put this wireless belt pack on Pablo, then we could just take off the XLR adapter and put the Lemo adapter on, and then he would be ready to go. So we can't do that with the hi-hat. Move that, right? You don't want to travel around with the hi-hat now. Maybe a marching band. Okay. Sorry? Any questions? No. We have questions.
Make a single preamp with a switch, flat or 80.
Yeah, adding a switch would increase the cost for all of them who don't need it. And it would also be a weak point, and it would add some noise. So we decided to go with this version. We sell these microphones, the 4099s that you chose not to keep. We sell them in packages, like with the saxophone holder. That's the crocodile mount, that one there. But we sell them as a sax package, as a guitar package, a violin package, cello package, and a drum package. And all the instruments that we carry, like the sax, the violin, the acoustic guitar, they come with that filter, with the low-cut filter, because we carry it, because that's the risk. All the other ones, like the drums, grand piano, cello and bass and stuff, stationary, they have the unfiltered version. But you can choose whatever you want. Just have to be aware that you don't put that one on the upright bass. That would be not good. Yes, more questions? Yes. Yes, exactly 10 dBs.
Would you use that in a double bass? I mean, would
Yeah.
you have the same color?
Yes.
Just 10 dB less?
There are two versions. I don't know if you can see it, or I should bore you. Sorry, we'll play that afterwards. PowerPoint, back to PowerPoint. There are two versions. There's a 10 dB difference between the two versions. And that comes down to the sensitivity and the dynamic range of the microphones. I'm working really fast here. Extreme SPL, it has, that's also the Extreme SPL, has a max SPL of 137 dB. That's the one with the yellow ribbon that I'm using on the snare and on the toms. But if the one that I'm using on the saxophone is the loud SPL, it only goes to 131, but it has a lower self noise. So if I'm working with instruments that are delicate, like a string orchestra, I multiply all these self noises, I would like to go with one with a higher sensitivity, the red ribbon. And the reason, or the way that I remember the difference between the yellow and the red is that the yellow, that's for something loud like brass, like trumpets, yellow trumpet brass, and the red is for woodwinds like the sax, guitar, strings, double bass. So wood, red, brass, yellow. You will never forget. What happens if you mix them up? Not much, just 10 dB difference.
Because rental companies, sometimes they don't want to spend money in mics for drums and drums for
Yeah.
so they just buy for drums.
Don't worry. Don't worry. If you put the red one by accident, you put that one on the snare drum or on the trumpet, you would just have smoke coming out of your console. It's not a... They can handle it. You cannot break the microphones with sound. So it's only a matter of the rest of the signal chain. We tried it on kick drum, the red one on kick drum, and we saw some distortion, some attenuation in the higher frequencies. But it never broke or anything. So you can use the red one as your standard microphone all over. My recommendation, but it's your choice. Cool. Nelson, come join the band. And then I will press the big red button and we will record your song. That's the end of today. Well, I'll play it back for you, but I can't mix it the way that the band would like it to be mixed right now. I can do a little, but I can't play it because we are on Dante, so I have a little latency, so it will sound weird. Thank you for understanding. No, hang on. Are we good? Are you happy? Take it away. Thank you. Oh, I thank you for playing. Fantastic. Maybe a little too much low end here and there, but a high pass filter would, on a lot of channels, would do wonders. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you had a good time, and maybe you took something away that you could use in your own work. If not, I am sorry for wasting your time. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Next time we will do an upright bass and an acoustic guitar, so we will have an entire acoustic band. That would be something else. A lot of challenges. Maybe a vocalist who can sing into the hi-hat microphone. Thank you very much.